What is going on, Badger fans? A special episode of Locked On Badgers today. Really excited to hit on some things we haven't been able to hit on a lot. I do want to talk about Luke Fickell. We have special guests coming on to talk about what it's like on campus right now and talk about women's basketball. Where is that program going, and is the right staff in place to hopefully turn that program around? All that and more in today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings, your team every single day, sometimes more than once a day, depending on what's happening. Special guest today, we're going to bring Krissy Birdsall in, sportscaster over at WSUM Sports, beat writer for Badger Herald, somebody who's following the women's team, and really everything going on in campus in Madison. So we're going to bring Krissy on. Thank you so much for joining the show, Krissy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and very excited to talk about the state of the Badgers, not only in, some of the more known sports like football and basketball and, some things like women's basketball as well. So good to be on here.
I'm excited for it. I really am. Really quickly, talk about what you have going on right now and where you're at.
Yeah, so we're currently in the summer semester here at UW-Madison. So currently not working on anything super exciting, but really gearing up for the fall. I'm going to hopefully do a lot of broadcasting this semester for not only football and soccer, but also the women's basketball and men's basketball programs when they start up come November usually.
Well, and let's start with football, because that's been the program that's really taken everybody by storm. Luke Fickell coming in. And one of the things I talked to you offline was a lot of people that come on the show, they're not on campus, right? What is that energy like on campus around the football team right now?
I think it's just really exciting. A lot of people, coming into last season, we were expecting a 1-2 loss team, that this was going to be a cakewalk in the Big Ten West, see how it goes in the rest of the conference. But this was a team that was a top 25 team. Obviously, that was not the case at all last year. And now we're in this situation with Luke Fickell, an entirely new coaching staff, and about half of team full of transfers. So I think the excitement is still there, but a little bit more cautiously optimistic. As I was talking to one of my broadcasters earlier, his name's Evan Schmidt, he said, I'm ready to get hurt again. And I think that's the best way to describe what the idea on campus is. I think a lot of people believe this is a 9, 10, 11 win team. But the worst thing they can do is disappoint with how high these expectations are.
Well, and that's a great point, because one of the things I have written just in the show notes are the hype level. Like, is it reaching unfair proportions? Because if just about any other scenario, if a new coach comes in somewhere and he wins 9 games, 8 games, people will say, it's not bad for the first year. I don't know if that cuts it. He's not going to get fired, but I think fans will be disappointed at that.
I think that is a very fair assumption. You look at what Lincoln Riley did last year, went to this USC program, brought in his guys, and in 1 year took that team from like a 5-win team to an 11-win team playing in a New Year's Six Bowl. I don't think that's going to be the same case with Luke Fickell. I think it's going to take a little bit longer with an entire new coaching staff and a lot of transfers to get used to the system that Wisconsin's playing before he can implement what he really wants. But I think just the way that the conference is going and how the non-conference schedule is, this is a team that can easily win 8-9 games just because of the competition that they're playing.
Talk to me about this, because there is very few things that I don't want to say annoy Badger fans more that are on message boards that are outside the state than student seating, students getting into seats on time, right? And I'm pointing at you because you're a student and you're there. No, but what is that an issue that students talk about, or is that just something older guys like me obsess over?
It's all of the time, but our perspective is definitely a lot different than what a lot of people are seeing. When you're going to a game, you guys are able to just walk right in, find your seats. I know that because my freshman year, I didn't even get football tickets, so I was able to just walk right into the stadium. For student section seating, the way that they organize it is very chaotic. You have to get your ticket when you go in, you get a section, you get funneled into a staircase, and they line you up one person at a time, and they do it row by row. It takes forever to get into the stadium. If you get there 15, 20 minutes before, you're missing kickoff. You're missing a good portion of the first quarter of the game. And a lot of students are like, how can we make this better? And there are ways to do it. But I think a lot of people see online, it takes a quarter for them to fill up, and they think, oh, students aren't showing up until kickoff. that is still partially true, but a lot of people do show up early. It's just the process takes a very long time for us to get into the stadium and into the seats.
So when you got to get there, let's say it's a big game, a game people are excited about, because obviously there's a lot of fans from every age group that aren't getting there early for Buffalo, for example.
Oh, yeah.
But let's say it's a big game, Iowa, Minnesota, Ohio State, whatever it is. How early do you have to get there to be in your seat, comfortable, ready to rock and roll by kickoff?
I would say maybe 45 minutes before for a big game. But even last year, Illinois State was the first game of the year. Didn't think that was going to draw a very large crowd. I had some friends that were going into the student section, an overfilled portion of the student section, and it was chaotic. And that was about 20, 15 minutes before the game kicked off. So it's a system problem in Wisconsin, and it's going to be every game. Even that Buffalo game, you'll get a lot of fans showing up, especially for this year, for a team that a lot of people are excited to see what's going to happen.
Now, that's a great point, because it's an optics thing. When the camera, we're watching on BTN, ESPN, whatever it is, and the camera pans and the kickoff's happening, right? And it just looks so empty. What's the best fix for that? Is it just to open up more entry?
I'm trying to think. There's been a lot of things I've seen, a lot of ideas that have been passed around. I know there was an older system way before I was even in school, that was a little bit less row by row seating and a little bit more open seating. I think that system, if they tried it out, could work a little bit better, but they need to do something. They need to fix something, especially for the students, because similar to how you guys are, we're frustrated too. If I'm showing up 15 minutes before a game, I want to sit down, have my pretzel and hot dog or my brat before
Mhm.
kickoff starts. And just the way the process is, I'm not even able to get my drink until second quarter.
No, it's a great point, because I'm not showing up 45 minutes early. Like, I don't want to do that. So that's a great point. I want to shift gears into something here that I always find interesting, talking to people with different perspectives, different backgrounds. I'm 40, so I'm an older fan. I don't know. Is that old? Is that old?
That's not that old.
Okay, thank you. I'm a mid-age fan, but my point is I've seen a Wisconsin style for a long time. From Barry Alvarez to Bielema to Christ. Is it so for me, going to the air raid in Longo and Fickell is a huge change, and I'm really excited to see it. For a younger fan and someone that hasn't been following the program for quite as long, is that shift matter to you? Does the history behind it matter to you?
I would say for me, not as much. At the end of the day, you're trying to win football games, right? And I'm not a coach, I'm not a player, so it's hard for me to speak on this, but you want to do the best system that's going to help you win the game. Wisconsin historically has relied on the run game, but in this day and age, with how defenses run, you're seeing it in the pros now, even that the running back position isn't as valued as much as it was 10, 15 years ago. Now, luckily for Wisconsin, we have two of the best running backs in the entire nation that we're able to rely on, especially in the last few seasons where we haven't had as great quarterback play or we haven't had a developed receiver core. I think this year it'll be a mix of that run game and that start of the air raid offense. It's going to be baby steps, though, before we see the whole Phil Longo effect take effect. And I'm excited to see it. It's exciting to see a little bit of a change up, but even Longo and Fickell reiterated in their first couple of meetings that they're not going to completely steer away from what Wisconsin was built on, which was built on that running game.
Yeah, that's really well said. I really like that perspective. All right, we're going to take a quick break for our friends of the show. We're going to come back, talk women's basketball, and I'm going to ask the question, why hasn't it been better, and what's going to happen the next couple of years? We're going to get into that next on our conversation with Krissy Birdsall. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show. And again, a quick thank you for just everyone listening. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in, helping build this community. Y'all are amazing. Let's take a quick break for our friends of the show over at eBay Motors. And yeah, Krissy would attest to this too. If you're building a championship team, you need to make sure every player is the perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head over to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part fits right the first time around. No more fumbling with different parts, pieces, years, etc. Don't waste your time. Just add your ride to my garage, look for the green check to know the part will fit, or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items apply and exclusions apply. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. Let's get back to this really awesome conversation that we got going on. Get Krissy back on the show, and Krissy, let's talk women's basketball. I'm fascinated by this sport because A, I love basketball because the pedigree of Wisconsin across so many sports is incredible. Volleyball, hockey, football, men's basketball. Why has women's basketball struggled so much to gain a foothold at Wisconsin, in your opinion?
I mean, historically, even looking back at the men's basketball team, they struggled as well up until maybe like 10, 15 years ago when they started getting into a rhythm. They started making those tournaments. And now we're seeing that this is a consistent program every single year. Wisconsin really has never gotten to a point where they have been consistently great. They haven't had a winning season in 13 years. They only had 5 winning seasons in the last 20 years of their program. And those 5 winning seasons came about 5 years back to back up until 2010. Even looking all the way back 40 years ago, they only went to the NCAA tournament 7 times. So historically, this is a program that has struggled. And when you bring in a new coach like Moseley, it's so difficult. And I don't envy her at this for all, is trying to take a historically bad program into something that is manageable, because once those games and the wins start coming, I think it becomes a little bit easier to get the recruits, to get the support. And she's been doing a really great job the last 2 years to do that. But it is a process that's going to take a long time to overturn. I mean, what has this program been in the past?
Yeah, it's a good point. I've heard coaches talk about some jobs you have to build the foundation of the house, and then some jobs you just have to come in and repaint it. And what she's doing is obviously having to rebuild the foundation, which is much harder. And it takes a special type of person to do that. And to your point, I mean, this is a program that's never won the Big Ten Conference, either the tournament or the regular season. Is there anything, do you think administratively, from an organization standpoint, a program standpoint, a university standpoint, they have the support and the facilities they need to build that successful foundation here?
I would say absolutely. Even when they had brought her in initially, from what I understand, I believe they used an outside firm to hire her. She had a lot of success at BU, which was her alma mater, before coming here. And she did a really great job at Boston, but it's a whole different game when you're playing in the Big Ten. I mean, you look at Iowa and Caitlin Clark, you look at Indiana, who's really good. There's just so many great teams in the Big Ten. Michigan, that was really good last year. It's going to take a while to get up to the point that they can compete with those teams. But depending on how this non-conference schedule comes, the last 2 years, Marisa Moseley has done a really great job bringing in new players. And she's developed the players that she's had. Julie Pospisilova, for example, coming in her last 2 years under Moseley, really shined. She did a really great job, and now she's graduated. And you have Serah Williams, who's taking over the reins, who's been an instant impact freshman. Now that Marisa Moseley has gotten her girls in, the ones that she's recruited from the start, I think this is a program that could easily go 500 this year, depending on how that non-conference schedule runs.
That's it. I really want to ask you this question too, and you just hit on it perfectly for me to dovetail into this. Because obviously this program is not going to be held to the expectations of the men's program this year, the football program. Is 500 a reasonable expectation, and is that a win for the program?
I would say absolutely. They won 6 Big Ten games last year, which was about 30% of their games. And that was considered a win because they hadn't won 6 Big Ten games since 2011, actually, looking at my notes right now. They had a 10-win season for the first time since 2019. So for Marisa Moseley, she came into this program that was basically bottom of the barrel basement. And last year, she took that team to a couple spots up. I believe they were 12th in the Big Ten. So to see a team that gets 500 to this year, I know their conference schedule plays a little bit to their strength. They faced Northwestern twice, who had really struggled last year. They play Rutgers twice, who's also in a rebuilding phase as well. 500 would be an absolute win for Marisa Moseley. I know she and her team are going to want to do a little bit better than that, but I think expectations-wise, if they hit 500, I would consider it a win.
Well, it speaks to your point of building the foundation. Badger fans who would probably universally admit Barry Alvarez is the best football coach we've ever had here. His first 2 years weren't good. It was building the foundation, and then it took off. And reading between the lines with what you're saying, it sounds like you believe Marisa Moseley, this staff, is the right staff to have in place in Wisconsin.
Absolutely. They made a lot of changes coming into this year. I believe they lost their associate assistant and their graduate assistant all to different programs. So she's bringing in now some coaches that she has personal experience with in the past. So she's building that coaching foundation as well, too. alongside her players. So this year and next year, I think, are going to be the most pivotal years in Moseley's career, because if she's able to manage those expectations and continue building this team, even if it's just a little bit every year, like we've seen these first 2 years, then she's going to be, I think, the person that's going to take this team to eventually a top five finish in the Big Ten. I mean, the Big Ten is one of the best conferences for women's basketball in the last few years, and historically has always been really good as well. But I think over the next couple of years, you will slowly start to see Wisconsin basketball climb in those rankings.
What will the fan support be like if the program climbs those rankings? Because we've seen women's volleyball. We've seen how fans come out to support women's hockey, right? Fans at Wisconsin, if you're winning, they'll come in. It doesn't matter. They'll come and support.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw it with other programs too. Indiana was selling out Assembly Hall. Iowa, same thing. I mean, I went to the Iowa game when they played at the Kohl Center just to go watch Caitlin Clark, because I was like, she's incredible. I think Wisconsin, very similarly, they saw a tick in attendance for the women's basketball games this year. And the more that they keep winning, the more support they're going to get from the fans in Madison.
I want to take a quick break here and then shift into next year. So I want to take a quick break for our friends of the show, come back, and then I want to talk about some of the players we lost. We've mentioned some of them, some of the players coming back, instant impact players, and what are we really expecting in 2023? We're going to talk about it next on Locked On Badgers with Krissy Birdsall. But first, a quick break with our friends of the show. And again, a quick just thank you to everybody who's giving us a little bit of your day. It is humbling and incredible, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. All right, let's get Krissy back on and continue this awesome conversation. And really quickly, I do want to say thank you again for coming on. I'm always appreciative of people willing to share their time, and I think we get smarter by having conversations like this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I'm excited to share the student perspective a little bit. I know a lot of students sometimes definitely want to see their opinions out there. And yeah, this is a great way to kind of show what the kids are thinking.
I agree. By the way, YouTube generates great metrics for the show. Like they show me who's a basic idea I need to get younger demographics anyway. I'll just say that. So this is awesome. I think we get a better perspective, different perspective, and I really do appreciate it. Let's talk. I want to finish off on last year's conversation. So Badger fans were a little curious to see several players transfer out, right? 3 of them in total, including a pretty good player, right? Maddie Wilk left, averaging 33 minutes a game, 12 points per game, 33 minutes, 12 points. Why do you think those 3 players transferred out?
Yeah, so we'll start with Mary Ferretto, who came in this year as a freshman, didn't get a lot of playing time. I think she was expecting a little bit more. So that one wasn't as surprising as a transfer. Same thing with Christina Lu. I was actually shocked when they were putting in Ronnie Porter and Sanaya Copeland. Just from what I had saw of Christina Lu last year, I thought she was going to be a starter by the end of her sophomore year. That wasn't the case. And I think that she had saw that too, that she wasn't building in this program in the way that she was hoping to. And I believe she's now at Illinois State or Ball State. So I do wish both of those players the best of luck too. The Maddie Wilkie one was by far the most surprising thing to me. From what I had heard, I think that she had thought that this team by 2 years would be in a lot different of a situation that they were going to be in. But the impact that she had on this team was so monumental, and her leaving the program, she was one of the top scorers. So her leaving was definitely a big punch to the Wisconsin women's basketball team, but they do have a good foundation behind. Obviously, losing Julie P. and Avery LaBarbera to graduation hurt as well, but Serah Williams had a phenomenal freshman year, and she will continue to build on that experience. As I mentioned, Sanaya Copeland and Ronnie Porter, 2 guards. Also, we're getting a lot of touches at the end of the season. And Brooke Shramick, who's going to be the senior leader of that team, she has continued to build every single year, and you've seen her confidence grow. So I think that they have a very solid foundation, that even though these 3 players were very good and they did have an impact in their own way, that the Wisconsin basketball team will still be able to have a successful season. And kind of like what we were talking about off of camera before was some of the freshmen coming in. There was 5 freshmen coming in, I believe, into this class. And a lot of them have a very good chance to come in and make an immediate impact as well.
Yeah, I want to talk about a couple of players you mentioned there. Definitely Brooke Shremick, 10.4 points per game, 4 rebounds a game, 31 starts, ton of experience. Do you think she's ready? A good shooter as well, by the way, on volume. Do you think she's ready to step into that role? Because a lot more is going to be expected of her from a playmaking standpoint.
I think she's definitely at that point. We saw last year that she was able to get in the open space, and as the season went on, her play just continued to improve. She was always the player that I had seen on the court that if they were able to get a defensive rebound, if she wasn't the one rebounding it, she would be the first person on the offensive side of the court to help push that offense forward. So I think as she goes into her senior year, it's going to be a big year for her because she is leading a relatively young program, but I think she's at that point where she is ready for it. And you had mentioned Brooke Stramick scored 10.4 points per game, and she was the lowest scoring starter of the 5 starters on last year's squad. So I think that she'll have a very good season in that term too, that she'll help manage and balance the offense. Hallie Douglas is another player who had an ACL injury early in the year, wasn't able to complete her season. She'll come back and she's going to make a huge impact not only on the offensive end, but defensively, she's really good up in the post.
Well, yeah, talk to me about you mentioned young team. I want to go to Williams, Serah Williams, someone who had a great game against a really good Ohio State team, followed up with a great game against Rutgers, 6'4", can finish either hand, good in the post, athletic. She feels like a building block. Is that the type of person for the next couple of years? Because freshmen, all Big Ten freshmen, is that the type of player for the next couple of years they're going to build around?
I definitely believe so. Even when she had committed to Wisconsin, it was a huge win for Marisa Moseley. She had a lot of success in New York, and then when she had gone to Canada for her final year of high school, she also had some success up there. So seeing her now in the college and just doing as well as she did her freshman year, I think that is going to be the type of player that Marisa Moseley is going to point to and say, this is a player that I recruited, I brought in, and look how good she did in her first year. You could be that player as well. And I think Serah Williams is going to be that model of what Wisconsin can be.
Well, that's a great point too, because once you get that in, you can then sell that to other people. Exactly what you're saying. You can sell that vision. It's no longer selling projection. You can say, look, I've proven it. This is a all Big Ten freshman player. I brought her in. I developed her, and I think that's a really good thing to point to. Is there a player on the team? You mentioned Hallie Douglas. Is there a player on the team that Badger fans aren't talking about enough or aren't thinking about that at the end of the year? We're going to say, wow, like she was incredible.
I think Natalie Leitzinger has definitely made some strides in the last 2 years that I have been able to see her play. Similar to Marisa Moseley, going into her third year of coaching, I'm going into my third year of school. So I haven't really got to see any of these players before the Moseley era. But the 2 years that I saw Natalie Leitzinger play, she has been leaps and bounds better. She's one of those players I'm going to expect to see a lot of touches coming into the season. I mentioned Sanaya Copeland and Ronnie Porter, both who are both freshmen going into their sophomore years. I'm going to see expecting big leaps from them as well. And even some freshman players that are coming in. Diana Jimenez, another point guard for Wisconsin, coming in as a freshman, averaged over 15 points a game and 6 rebounds while she was in high school. And they need a point guard for Wisconsin right now after losing Avery LaBarbera. So she could be another player that could come in and kind of fill in the role that we lost last year.
Last week, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. What is your prediction for this year? I know you said 500, potentially 500. What if you had to predict where the season's going to go? What is your very early prediction?
I think a lot of it's going to depend on where the non-conference schedule falls. That hasn't come out yet, so it's a little bit difficult to tell what kind of competition they're going to get for an overall record. But for the conference record, something that I can give you a little bit more of like a hard piece on, I think they'll go just below 500. There's a couple of games that could go either way that will get them to 500, but I could see them winning probably, I would say just under 500 in their conference.
But to your point, that would be a building block, right? You do that in the next year, especially with Serah being another year older. She'd be going into her junior season. Now you've really built into something with those 5 freshmen coming into their sophomore season at that point. I would assume that's kind of the hopeful path there.
And I think that's what Marisa Moseley is trying to do, is just slowly build this foundation one block at a time. And I'm so hoping to see that this year is where we kind of start to see that progress made. We saw it a little bit last year. They were in some really close games. Sometimes we're able to finish it out. Sometimes weren't able to finish it out. I think we'll start to see them finish it out more than they weren't. And they're doing really well in the future of recruiting too. They already got 2 players for the class of 2024. They continue to build on that end. And if Marisa Moseley keeps laying down these foundations like she has been, this is going to be a pretty good house in the next couple of years.
That's exciting. Krissy, this has been phenomenal. I really do appreciate it. Where can people follow what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Krissy Birdsall. All of my socials are at Krissy Birdsall. You can find me on there. I'm also on TikTok at Krissy with the Call. You'll see a lot of different sports that I tweet out, a lot of Badgers content, of course. And come fall, I will be writing for the Badger Herald and sportscasting for WSUM 91.7 FM Madison.
Absolutely love it. And we're going to put all that out when we release the show as well. So everyone, I encourage you to go follow Krissy, see what she's up to, and get ready for the basketball season, the women's basketball season, the football season, everything we're talking about. Krissy, thank you again so much for jumping on. Really do appreciate it.
Yeah, it should be an exciting one. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, anytime. And for everyone tuning in, thank you so much for listening. Coming up later this week, we got a couple more high school coaches, a lot of stuff. Just keep tuning in on Wisconsin, and we'll talk tomorrow.